Homelessness 2.0, day 24. The only reason I didn't even have to think about what day today is because it's Christmas Eve. And I'm tired because I just woke up because it is 11 o'clock. And, yeah. 11 o'clock, just woke up. Got the driving lesson today. This is going to be the last, meal that I'm going to be, quote unquote, cooking. The reason I mentioned that, well, I'm mentioning it because I'm cooking it. So, but like, tomorrow is the transition. Tomorrow is like, hey, it's time to flip. It's time to get prepared to move out. Because that's one of the things about being homeless is that you're always moving out. Because you're not going to stay where you are. You're not going to stay where you think you're going to stay. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months out. And so I got to do some cleaning and whatnot. And then on Saturday, I'm going to go ahead and hit up the grocery store and I'm going to get some some pot pies, some hot dogs, so that I can just kind of use the microwave, use the paper plates that I have, clean up as needed, start getting stuff put back into storage that needs to go back to storage. Because then on Monday, I'm trying to find a place that it's I haven't checked the balance yet, but I did check earlier today on Fidelity, and since S&P 500 was up, which is where most of my stocks are associated with my, if not all of them, I think, are associated with the mutual fund. Those have gone up, and so the total amount of money that I had in mutual fund was $14,000, roughly. Like I said before, I had over 10,000. When I first started this thing, I had 20,000. And then I paid for this place, I paid for the movers, I paid for the mailbox, and then I paid for the storage. And all of that totaled to roughly $3,000. So, shut up. So it cost me $3,000 to move out of a place that I was paying $450 a month. Because I couldn't find another place. So far, Homelessness 2.0 is still more expensive. And that is, in reality, the reality of homelessness. Homelessness comes in so many different forms. You don't have to just be in a tent on the street. You don't have to be at a shelter to be homeless. You can be, living at a friend's. You can be living at a friend's place, sleeping on their couch, or sleeping in the same bed as them, just like I did when I lived with that one friend for a month until they kicked me out on my birthday. I slept on their bed with them, even though he was Texas and he and I are both homophobic and had so many other, he had personal space issues way more than I ever did. But even so, it was still an uncomfortable situation throughout the entirety. Didn't have my own space, nothing like that. And so Like I said, it comes in so many forms. Yeah, sure. I'm sheltered right now. Right now. One might say, well, why aren't you just looking for a job? I don't know what the fuck I'd do. You know what I want to do? That I don't have time to do, even if I did. Yeah, even though I know that I have a month ahead of me. Well, I mean, I don't technically know because I haven't paid for it yet. But let's just say, for all intents and purposes, I know I have a month ahead of me. It still doesn't matter. I have to know that the month is there. Like, I still don't have the place lined up. I don't know where I'm going to be. I don't know how it's associated with stores and so many other things. Like, I've got to look that stuff up. Like, the reason I chose this place is because it's right up the street from a grocery store. And even so, like, it's still kind of an inconvenience. So it's like, despite the fact that it's relatively close, it's still an inconvenience. Because it's not as convenient as, stay. It's not as convenient as, let's say, getting in a car. Like, I realized driving the other day, like, how much better aspects of life are. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, I would love to just go run errands instead of just practicing driving. Like, that's where my brain went after one 2-hour session. Is instead of, hey, I want to drive, blah, 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 or I don't want to drive, it was, God, I need a fucking car. Like, how sad is that? And, like, it's because the way that our whole system is set up, it's designed around cars. Why don't we have corner stores that have the same prices as grocery stores and so on? I've already talked about this before. It's like the selling point of a grocery store could be, instead of prices, it could just be, hey, we have more variety. We have more stuff for you to choose from. So it's more of a one-stop shop. Anyway. But I mean, like, so one of the things that I was thinking about, because I was just watching a video from Ethan Chabowski, and it's this, what the hell was it called? Crap, I can't remember what it is. It's, he uploaded like 2 years ago, I think. Anyway, it's this old, like, family recipe of, creating this, like, sort of sticky dough and then throwing a bunch of potatoes inside of it and then creating this massive dumpling, right? And then you flatten the whole thing out and make it real skinny. And then you bake it and then you like, butter it and flip it and butter it and flip it and butter it and flip it until, it's pretty much golden brown to go through. And since it's thin, it's going to cook easier than, let's say, if it were, a thicker dumpling-like thing. And it sounds great. And it also sounds like straight up poverty food. Like, a lot of food, especially a lot of bigger recipes, and especially recipes that have a lot of food to them, but don't have a massive amount of ingredients. Straight up poverty food. What is it? Cacio e pepe. Straight up poverty food. It is noodles, butter, cheese, pepper. That's it. That's all it is. You're not gonna get a whole lot of nutrition out of that. You might get some of your, vitamins and minerals and whatnot, but it's not gonna be super filling. Like, it'll be filling at first, but it's pasta. Pasta is breaks down easier, and, it's less starches, and so it's gonna be, like, this is filling. These are beans. But beans are generally poverty food. There's so many things that are poverty food in this world. And, we do what we can. But, like, just looking at that recipe, I'm like, man, I'd love to make that recipe. But I can't. I don't have the fucking time. Sure, I kind of have the time. But, first of all, I'd have to buy a whole ass bag of flour. Which then means I have to use the whole ass bag of flour. The problem with using a whole ass bag of flour is, unless you're, like, feeding 4 people a day, that whole ass bag of flour is going to take months to consume because it's such an efficient method of making a lot of food. But, like, what he made probably had, I want to say, 12, 16 servings, something around that. Like, and again, this poverty food is going to be real filling. It's filled with potatoes, which have quite a lot of micronutrients rather. It's mostly starch. There's going to be some fat, obviously. The butter's going to be in there. And then, there's eggs and some other stuff that's involved in the ingredients list. But, like, it's not just that. It's like, okay, I think he took, like, 8 russets, and they were relatively small russets. But I'd have to go to the store. I'd have to buy those russets. I'd have to buy the big-ass, bag of flour and all the other ingredients that are associated with that thing. Now, you might say, okay, you have all of those ingredients. All of those ingredients, for the most part, can be incorporated into other things. But again, the kicker is, if you go back a couple of minutes, that stuff, especially the flour, will last a while. Like, there's no way in hell I can make enough. There's no way that I can utilize pragmatically, with proper timing, an entire bag of flour and be healthy in a month. Like, I'm already not that healthy as it is. Eating a whole bag of flour within a bunch of recipes, breads and cakes and pies and or just other stuff. No, it's like a 2 or 3 month commitment, really. And then if I have other things happening throughout the day, like, if I didn't have to work, but I was taken care of, if, let's say, I were a kept man, I had a sugar mama, then maybe my life would be different. I'd spend more time doing things like, shit. Okay, here's part of it. Most of those recipes require you to do double rising. So you have to combine all the ingredients, all flour and eggs and whether it's water, milk, yeast, and all this other stuff. You have to combine all those together, knead them up for quite a bit so you can really incorporate them into each other. Make sure that your bread is appropriately hydrated for the specified end result. And then you have to do the bulk fermentation, the first rise. That's just waiting around for a period of time. And it depends on how much yeast is in it. It depends, again, on the intended end result, what ingredients are in it, and all this other stuff. So that can be, sometimes 20 minutes. Sometimes it can be an hour. So you've got to wait around, but be ready within an hour. Now, you could go play some video games, watch some TV shows, whatever you want to do, right? But if you're working, you can't do any of that. You already, that 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes of time just waiting for bread to rise. There's a reason why so many people were doing it when the pandemic started. And, say, not beforehand. That's why everybody started baking bread. Because they didn't have the time to before. Because when you have, at least a 30 to 60 minute commute from your 9-hour job, because you have, let's just say, for the sake of, an hour-long lunch, and it's an 8-hour workday. you've already cut down of your 24 hours a day, at least 10 to 12 hours, depending on, again, commute time. Half your day's already gone, and that's just from work. Oh, let's do sleep. Let's go ahead and sleep. Most people are probably sleeping 6 hours just so they can get enough. But the reason why they're not sleeping more is because they don't have enough time to do the other shit in the day. So then they're going to spend money on things like coffee. Unless they're lucky enough to have it at work. But even then, they may not like what's at work, so they may bring their own, they may buy their own, they go to Starbucks or whatever. And then, because they're not getting enough sleep, because they don't have enough time in the day, because again, we've just cut off of 24 hours. There's anywhere between, let's say, 10 and 12 just for work, even though you're only working 8 hours. You have your lunch break and you have your commute. And chances are, if you work fewer hours, you have a longer commute. It's almost always the case. It's not always the case. It's almost always the case. And so, you get a 9-hour workday because of lunch. If you don't have a lunch, you're not working enough hours to really make any money. So you're probably working another job. Or maybe you're going to school and you've got some additional income from that in one respect or another. Or you're going to school and you're going to work and you can't really do it. Like, there's so many problems that come in so many forms. Most people in those situations cannot spend 20 to 60 minutes waiting for fucking bread to rise. And then, you gotta boil your potatoes and all that shit. And you might be like, okay, meal prep. Sure. Spend a day meal prepping. That's a great idea. Most people already do that when they're in those situations. Unless there's other issues that are going on. Like for me, I have a really hard time meal prepping. I do. Like, I have a hard time planning what I'm going to do between now and like 4 p.m. today. And that's 4.5 hours. Like, what am I going to do? I'm going to shower. That's about it. Because not only is time management a difficulty for me, time is a difficult thing for me. Just the perception of time is wrong for me. I went to bed at 4 this morning because I didn't really know what time it was, despite the fact that I have a computer in front of my face. Now, I was playing video games and doing some other video game related stuff, but the things that the stuff that I was doing didn't feel like it took 2, 3, 4 hours. And it's like, and I wasn't just doing that, I was also, checking some stuff on YouTube and going to other, social media sites and stuff like that. Because if I just try to go to bed at a certain time, it doesn't really work for me. I never have been able to do it. That's why my days, and especially after the whole time change thing happened, my days just get all kind of janky, and I don't even have a job and I'm waking up tired. But I do know that if I didn't have to worry, that I knew that I was going to be in a place for a while, I could take my time. I could not worry about time. In fact, my time would probably be managed even better. Point of fact, I know it would. When I stopped being homeless after the first long stint, 2.5 years, when I came back from Alaska, I had $10,000. And then I got another $5,000 from Pell Grants from school. And since school was paid for, the money was just coming straight to me. And so I had for an entire year about $15,000 to work with. Now I could have made that $10,000 last longer. I was only paying $300 a month for rent to live in the living room. But in that time, despite the fact that I was going to school full time, I had all the time in the day to do whatever the hell I wanted. Because even full time wasn't 8 fucking hours a day. School was a 10-minute bike ride from where I was living. So I had time to experiment with food, I was losing weight. I was eating better because I didn't have to worry about time. I'd get to school on Mondays and Wednesdays at like noon, I want to say. I had a sculpture class. Started out great. Teacher's a psychopath. Not doing that again. Plus, I'm not an artist. I'm creative, but I'm not an artist. We are all creative in our own ways. I'm definitely not any kind of artist. Then I had a little break. Quite a long one, in fact. A few hours. Which was nice. You know, it was a nice break. Like, it was a break. It wasn't 30 minutes. It wasn't even an hour. It was long enough I could watch a whole ass movie between classes. I had time between one class and the next. So if I had the wherewithal, I would do some studying for the next class. Now, I didn't do great. Because I'll be honest, the teacher for that class and the material, it was anatomy and physiology, she wasn't really the greatest teacher because she didn't do a lot of interaction. It was just lecture. But it was lecture in this sort of like almost... It was like a more personal space type lecture instead of lecture hall. But it was still pretty much the same. And I'm not good with that. So I'd often sleep in the class. Still passed with a C. Because some of it I picked up. And, a lot of it made sense to me, but other stuff would just blow past me. Especially when it started getting more towards like organic chemistry type stuff. And then my day was over. 2 classes. It was about 6 hours, maybe 7. But because I had that long break in between classes, I didn't have to worry about it. And I would say that's one of the things about our working world that doesn't seem to understand something. We're required to be at work for 8 hours a day to meet certain federal guidelines and so many other bullshit reasons. But so much productivity is just done within an hour or two. And a lot is just waiting around, doing fuck all. And it's like, why not pay people for the work they do and then let them go on about their fucking lives? Why do you have to be there for 8 fucking hours? Why do you have to be observed or ensure that somebody, like, I get, depending on the job, of course, it makes sense. With my last job, I needed to be there for 8 hours, but I kind of didn't either. Not 8, 5, because I never worked 8 hours because I wasn't full time. Because that's how they save money on us, because they don't have to give us benefits or anything. And it's like, if a job can be done in 2, but you're paying them for 8, just give them the 8 and let them go after 2. Why does anybody have to be somewhere for 8 fucking hours? It's unnecessary. Because then, think about that. What if you were able to produce what you do in half the time, and then you got to leave? Then what? An hour-long commute wouldn't be nearly as problematic, because now you're still making the same amount of money. Let's put that in. You're still making the same amount of money no matter what. If we just change out external parameters. Now, I'm going to make sure that this thing is still recording because it shut off yesterday. I keep forgetting to turn off my hotspot. I think that's the reason. I turn my hotspot off and it lasts. And if I keep it on, sometimes it overheats sometimes. So anyway, it's also earlier in the day, so it's cooler. But you make the same amount of money, you work half the hours. Even if you have an hour commute, instead of a 9-hour work day with 2 bookending 1 hours, putting it at 11. Let's say, because you don't really need to lunch, or let's say you just have a slight break, a 30-minute break out of 4. So you have a 4.5-hour day instead of a 9-hour day. And you still have those 2 hours bookending you. It's only 6.5 hours instead of 11. How much more time? How much more could you do every day in your life if you had an extra 4.5 hours? Oh, but what about people who work at McDonald's? What about them? Pay them more. I mean, they're going to have to be there for that period of time, right? Because they're waiting for people to show up. It's because they're a service-related industry whereby it is dependent on a person or something making the food. Now, if you were able to automate the whole damn thing, then it wouldn't matter, right? Then you just have a couple people cleaning. And then the same thing happens. Back in the golden age of sci-fi, back in the 50s and 60s, we had this really cool idea where things like automation and whatnot just allowed for people to have more of their day. It's been 70 fucking years, people. Come on, let's do something about it. I mean, why is it people are still going back to work? Like literal physical jobs. When their job became remote during this whole pandemic. It's like, what's the point? If the job can be done remotely, do it fucking remotely. Let people do whatever they need to at home. I'm not saying that every single human who went remote is in a better position. There are some people who deal with domestic violence that it was just exacerbated. And that is a totally different conversation that has a totally different symptom, or it's a totally different symptom of so many other problems that's in this country and this world. And I feel for those people, I really do. Because, for instance, for me, I lived with domestic violence as a child. School was mostly a reprieve, but then when I dealt with bullies at school, it wasn't. Which, honestly, makes sense as to why whenever I get into a fight at school, I just run off. I literally leave school campus. It makes sense because school was no longer the reprieve at that point. It was not a safe space. A real safe space. I was naive because I was a child. Children are naive. And so then I could go home because nobody was fucking there. But it still wasn't that safe. Because I had so much fear in me. Despite the fact that my parents, being that they were also stuck in this 8-hour workday hell, they had no reason to go home early. Unless I was there because I love school. So in my brain, even though I didn't really piece all of these things together, because I had just misbehaved. Probably got into a fight. Someone was being a shithead to me. And I used violence and not words. Because I didn't learn how to use words, I learned how to use violence from my parents. I feared that my parents would show up. And every time I heard a car drive by, I'd freak out. So even though I was technically in a safe space, because nobody was there, it wasn't that safe for very long. And that has been my life in so many ways. Running from one place to another, trying to find a safe space. And in a world that doesn't care about its people, doesn't care about the needs of its people, employers don't care about the needs of the people that they employ. When we create a world like that, whereby everything, damn it, that's fucking. I had some bean skin in between my teeth. When we've created a world that doesn't care about its people and then makes it to where individualism is the way to live and detachment from other people, and it's just this me world, it's no wonder everything's going to shit and everything is trying to go back when that's what fucked it up in the first place. We don't need to go back to normal. Because normal's what got us here in the first fucking place. I mean, I just thought of this. This is funny, which is why I laughed. Did you know that sociopaths have a hard time learning their lesson, which is why they do it again? Our country and so many others are a bunch of fucking sociopaths. They did a thing, it caused a problem, and they want to go back doing the other fucking thing. They talk, what is it? And it's often attributed to Einstein. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Yeah, it's called sociopathy. It's a different kind of insanity. And we're trying to go back instead of trying to make it better. I'm going to be wearing a mask for a while. And not just because some places require it, but because, A, places require it, but also B, because I feel like it's the right thing to do at this point. Because it's not about me. Wearing the mask is not about me. Me is the problem. Us, we are the solution. Have fun.